We talked to over 100 certified marine mechanics, from Florida dealerships to independent shops in Canada and Australia. We asked them one simple question: what do boat owners do that destroys their engines? What they told us was shocking. Some of these mistakes are so common, so deeply believed to be the right thing to do, that thousands of owners make them every single season. And the worst part, a few of these secrets point straight back at the industry itself. One mechanic told us, "I see the same disasters every week, and the owners have no idea they caused it." Before we reveal the full list, drop a comment below. What's the one thing you always do to your outboard after every trip? We want to know if you're already making one of these mistakes, or if you've been doing it right all along. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and tap that bell icon so you never miss another investigation like this one. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what separates an engine that lasts 3,000 hours from one that fails at 300. Let's begin. Walk into any boat show in Miami, Sydney, or Toronto, and you'll see them lined up like trophies. Gleaming outboards mounted on transoms, their cowlings polished to perfection. Yamaha, Mercury, Suzuki, Honda. The names alone carry weight. They represent decades of engineering, billions of dollars in research, and a promise that has become the foundation of modern boating: reliability. And for the most part, that promise is real. Today's four-stroke outboards are technological marvels. They're lighter than their predecessors, more fuel efficient, and built to tolerances that would have seemed impossible just 20 years ago. Manufacturers routinely quote lifespan figures of 1,500 to 3,000 hours or more. Some engines have crossed the 5,000-hour mark and kept running. The marketing speaks for itself. Designed to run, built to last. That's not just a slogan, it's an expectation that buyers carry with them the moment they sign the paperwork. When you spend $15,000, $20,000, or even $40,000 on an outboard motor, you believe you're buying peace of mind. You believe the engineers have done their job. You believe that if you simply turn the key and go, the engine will take care of itself. And that belief is where the trouble begins. Because here's what the brochures don't tell you. Here's what the salespeople gloss over. Here's what most owners only learn after the repair bill arrives. The engine is not the problem. The human is. We spoke with over 100 certified marine mechanics across 6 countries. Men and women who spend their days elbow-deep in outboards, diagnosing failures, replacing parts, and listening to owners explain what went wrong. We asked them a simple question: what do boat owners do that destroys their engines? Their answers were remarkably consistent and remarkably uncomfortable. One mechanic from a dealership in Fort Lauderdale put it bluntly: "The engines aren't the problem," he said. "The owners are." And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean they were never told what actually matters. They were sold a machine and handed a manual that nobody reads. Then they're surprised when something breaks. Another technician, this one from a family-owned shop in British Columbia, described it differently. "People treat outboards like refrigerators. Plug it in, forget about it. But these aren't refrigerators. They're high-performance machines operating in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Salt water, heat, vibration, fuel that's different in every country, and owners expect them to just work forever with no attention." What emerged from these conversations was a pattern, not a list of rare, exotic failures, not freak accidents or manufacturing defects, but a set of specific, repeated behaviors. Mistakes that mechanics see every single week. Mistakes that turn a 3,000-hour engine into a 300-hour disaster. Some of these mistakes are obvious, at least in hindsight. Others are counterintuitive. A few are so deeply embedded in boating culture that owners defend them even after the damage is done. And perhaps most troubling of all, some of these mistakes are quietly enabled by the industry itself. By dealers who skip steps, by manuals that bury critical information, by a system that assumes trust at every level and rarely verifies it. The gap between what an outboard can achieve and what it actually survives is not filled by engineering. It's filled with human choices, good ones and bad ones, informed ones and ignorant ones. Over the next several minutes, we're going to walk through the 10 most damaging mistakes that mechanics witness again and again. We'll explain why owners make them, what happens inside the engine when they do, and how much it costs to fix. Some of these will confirm what you already suspected. Others might change the way you treat your outboard forever. Let's start with the silent killer, the one that mechanics see more than any other, the one that begins the moment you pull up to a fuel dock. Ethanol. In most of North America, the gasoline you pump into your boat contains 10% ethanol. In some regions, it's even higher. E15 is becoming more common, and many owners don't even realize what they're buying. The fuel looks the same. It smells the same. It seems to work the same. But inside your tank, something dangerous is happening. Ethanol is hydrophilic. It attracts water from the air, and when enough moisture accumulates, the ethanol separates from the gasoline and sinks to the bottom of the tank, forming a corrosive layer that sits right above your fuel pickup. The next time you start your engine, that contaminated mixture gets sucked directly into the fuel system. The damage is slow at first. Fuel injectors begin to corrode. Seals swell and crack. Carburetors develop varnish. One mechanic in Tampa described pulling injectors from a 2-year-old engine that looked like they had been dipped in acid. The owner had no idea. He thought he was doing everything right. The fix is simple but requires discipline. Use ethanol-free fuel whenever possible. If you can't, add a quality fuel stabilizer immediately after filling up. Not before storage, but every single time. And never let fuel sit in your tank for more than 2 or 3 weeks without treatment. The cost of ignoring this? $800 to $2,500 in fuel system repairs, often recurring. The second sin is even more common and even easier to prevent. Every mechanic we spoke to mentioned it. The freshwater flush that never happens, or happens wrong. After a day in salt water, your engine's cooling system is coated with brine. Salt crystals begin forming in the water passages within hours. Left untreated, those deposits accumulate over time, restricting flow, trapping heat, and slowly strangling your engine from the inside. One mechanic told us he can identify an engine that's never been properly flushed just by looking at the color inside the cooling passages. It's like calcium buildup in a coffee maker, he said. Except this coffee maker costs $15,000. The damage leads to overheating, head gasket failure, and in severe cases, cylinder wall scoring that requires a complete power head rebuild. The fix takes 5 to 10 minutes after every saltwater trip. Use a flush port or muffs. Let fresh water run through the system until it flows clean. Every single time. No exceptions. The third sin is related and just as deadly, ignoring the telltale stream. That small arc of water shooting out of your engine while it runs? That's not decoration. It's confirmation that your water pump is functioning and coolant is circulating. If that stream is weak, inconsistent, or absent, something is wrong. Usually the impeller, the small rubber component that pushes water through the system. Impellers wear out. They crack. They lose blades. And when they fail, the engine overheats, sometimes within minutes. We heard stories of owners who ran their engines for an entire season without ever glancing at the telltale. By the time they noticed a problem, the power head was destroyed. Replacing an impeller costs $150 to $300. Replacing a power head can exceed $12,000. The fourth sin involves something every engine needs: oil. Many owners treat their outboards like cars. They use automotive oil because it's cheaper and easier to find. They extend oil change intervals because that's what they do with their truck. But marine engines operate under completely different conditions. Higher sustained RPMs, heavier loads, constant exposure to moisture and salt air. Marine-specific oils contain corrosion inhibitors and additives that automotive oils lack. Using the wrong oil or waiting too long to change it leads to sludge buildup, bearing wear, and premature internal damage. One mechanic showed us an engine with just 200 hours that looked like it had run for 2,000. The owner had used discount automotive oil and changed it once a year. The fifth mistake seems minor until you understand what's actually happening inside your engine. The cowling, that plastic or fiberglass cover that wraps around your power head. Many owners remove it to check something, then run the engine without putting it back properly. Others leave it loose thinking better airflow means a cooler engine. They're wrong. The cowling isn't just a protective shell, it's an engineered component of your intake and exhaust system. It directs airflow across specific passages, it maintains pressure differentials that affect fuel mixture, and it shields sensitive electronics from water spray. Running without it, or with an improper seal, can trigger fuel delivery problems, misfires, and error codes that seem to come from nowhere. One technician in Queensland told us he spent hours diagnosing a phantom electrical fault before discovering the owner had been running with a cracked cowling seal for months. The sixth sin is invisible until it's too late. Fuel contamination. Every marina claims to sell clean fuel. Every owner assumes the fuel they buy is safe, but the reality is different. Water collects in underground storage tanks. Sediment accumulates in dock pumps. Particulates pass through filters that haven't been changed in months. And all of that ends up in your tank, then in your fuel lines, then in your injectors. The solution is a water-separating fuel filter installed between your tank and your engine. A quality 10-micron filter with a clear bowl that you can inspect before every trip. Most manufacturers recommend them. Many dealers don't mention them, and the owners who skip this step often don't realize they have a problem until their direct injection fuel system suffers catastrophic damage. According to multiple dealer service surveys, fuel contamination is the #1 cause of outboard service calls, not engine defects, not electrical failures, dirty fuel. The seventh sin involves a system most owners use every time they leave the dock without understanding how it works. Trim and tilt. Modern outboards allow you to adjust the angle of the engine relative to the transom. Trimming up raises the bow and increases speed. Trimming down improves hole shot and rough water handling, but too many owners treat the trim switch like a throttle adjustment, constantly toggling it without understanding the mechanical consequences. Running fully trimmed down in shallow water causes cavitation, a phenomenon where the propeller creates vacuum bubbles that collapse against metal surfaces and cause pitting. Slamming the trim up and down repeatedly stresses hydraulic seals and shock loads the lower unit. Over time, trim cylinder seals fail, water enters the hydraulic system, and the lower unit, the most expensive component most owners forget exists, begins to corrode from the inside. Repairs can run into thousands of dollars. The eighth sin is seasonal and geographic, but devastating when it happens. Winterization. In northern climates, water freezes. This is not news. But every year, mechanics in Canada, the northern United States, and parts of Europe see engines destroyed by owners who thought a mild winter meant they could skip the process, or who drained the lower unit but forgot about the cooling passages, or who never fogged the cylinders and returned in spring to find corrosion throughout the combustion chambers. Residual water in the cooling system expands as it freezes. Blocks crack, heads warp, exhaust manifolds split. The average repair bill for freeze-related damage ranges from $2,000 to $6,000. The average cost of proper winterization? Under $200. The ninth sin is mechanical and mathematical. Propeller selection. Every outboard is designed to operate within a specific RPM range at wide-open throttle. The propeller you choose determines whether your engine can reach that range. Too much pitch and the engine lugs, unable to spin fast enough, building carbon and generating excess heat. Too little pitch and the engine over-revs, accelerating internal wear. One mechanic told us he asks every customer the same question. What's your RPM at wide open throttle? Half of them don't know. That number, he said, tells him everything. We saved this one for last among the 10, not because it's the most common, but because when we asked mechanics what owners should never do, more than a third of them said the same thing. And it surprised us. They said, don't assume the dealer did the pre-delivery inspection correctly. When you buy a new outboard, whether mounted on a boat or purchased separately, it's supposed to go through a process called PDI, pre-delivery inspection. This checklist exists for a reason. It includes fluid level verification, torque checks on critical bolts, software updates rigging confirmation, and a dozen other steps designed to ensure the engine leaves the showroom ready to run safely. But here's what mechanics told us, again and again, from dealerships and independent shops alike. Brand new engines are arriving with problems that should have been caught on day one. Low gear oil, sometimes no gear oil at all, loose battery connections, uncalibrated trim sensors, missing zinc anodes, fuel lines that weren't properly bled, software that was never updated to the latest version. One technician in South Carolina described a new engine that came in for its first service with a water pump impeller already failing. It had been installed incorrectly at the factory and never checked by the dealer. Another mechanic in Western Australia told us about a customer who lost power offshore because a fuel fitting had never been properly tightened. The boat was 3 weeks old. Why does this happen? The mechanics were blunt about it. High-volume dealers during peak season are under enormous pressure to move inventory. Spring hits, and suddenly everyone wants their boat in the water. Technicians are stretched thin. Some are undertrained. Some are new, and the assumption at every level is that someone else already checked. The manufacturer trusts the dealer trusts the technician trusts the process, and the owner, who just spent tens of thousands of dollars, trusts everyone. One mechanic put it simply: this isn't about bad dealers. It's about a system that assumes trust at every step and never verifies. The implication is uncomfortable, but the solution is practical. When you take delivery of a new engine, request a copy of the completed PDI checklist. Ask to witness critical steps or have them explained, and within the first 10 hours of operation, schedule an inspection with an independent mechanic. Not to find warranty claims, but to verify that everything was done right. This leads to a broader question: why doesn't the industry talk about these things? Part of the answer is economic. Manufacturers make money from parts and service, not from engines that never break. Extended warranties are a revenue stream, not necessarily a signal of confidence. The longer an owner waits to learn about proper maintenance, the more likely they are to need repairs. Part of the answer is structural. Owners don't know what they don't know. Manuals are dense, often digital, and rarely read. Dealers are incentivized to sell, not to educate. And by the time a mechanic sees the engine, the damage is already done. And part of the answer is cultural. Boating celebrates a certain attitude: freedom, independence, the idea that you can just untie the lines and go. Admitting that you don't understand your engine, that you need help, that you might be doing something wrong, runs against that identity. So owners stay quiet. They learn from each other, often inheriting the same myths and mistakes that have circulated for decades. Mechanics are the last line of defense, but they only see you after something breaks. One shop owner in Ontario said something that stuck with us: "I don't blame the customers. I blame the system that sold them a $30,000 engine and a 200-page PDF." So what separates the owners who get 3,000 hours from their outboards from those who barely reach 300? We asked the mechanics that question too, and their answers had nothing to do with brand loyalty or engine size or how much money someone spent. It came down to mindset. The owners who get the most life out of their engines don't treat them like appliances. They treat them like aircraft. Every flight has a checklist. Every landing has a debrief. Every anomaly gets logged, investigated, and resolved before the next departure. These owners aren't mechanics themselves, necessarily, but they pay attention, they ask questions, and they never assume that everything is fine just because the engine started. The habits are simple but consistent. Before every trip, they do a visual inspection. They check fluid levels. They confirm the telltale stream is flowing strong. They look for corrosion, loose fittings, anything that seems different from the last time out. It takes 5 minutes. It prevents disasters. After every trip, especially in salt water, they flush the engine with fresh water, not for 30 seconds, for 5 to 10 minutes until the water runs clean. They wipe down the cowling. They check the prop for dings and fishing line wrapped around the shaft. If the boat is going to sit for more than a few days, they add fuel stabilizer. At the start and end of every season, they follow a maintenance schedule: oil changes, impeller replacements, anode inspections, fuel filter swaps, not when something feels wrong. On a calendar, because by the time something feels wrong, the damage is already accumulating. Once a year, they bring the engine to a trusted mechanic, not a dealer service department running on volume. An independent technician who knows their boat, knows their usage, and takes the time to look for problems that haven't surfaced yet. They pay for expertise and they get peace of mind in return. And throughout it all, they keep a log: hours, fuel, issues, repairs, dates. It sounds obsessive until you realize that this single habit gives them something most owners never have: a complete picture of their engine's life. One mechanic in New Zealand told us the best customers he has aren't the ones who never call. They're the ones who call before something breaks. They notice a vibration at idle. They hear a sound that wasn't there last month. They see a number on the gauge that seems slightly off. And they ask. That willingness to ask, to admit uncertainty, to treat the engine as a partner rather than a servant, is the difference between longevity and early failure. Outboard engines are marvels of modern engineering. They compress hundreds of horsepower into a package that fits on the back of a boat. They operate in salt spray and summer heat and freezing winters. They endure shock loads and constant vibration and fuel that varies from one dock to the next. The fact that they work at all is extraordinary. The fact that they last as long as they do is a testament to decades of refinement. But reliability is not a guarantee. It's a relationship between the machine, the water, and the human who chooses every single day whether to pay attention or look away. The mechanics we spoke to didn't want to shame anyone. They wanted to save engines, and they wanted to protect the people who depend on them. Because out on the water, miles from shore, there are no second chances. There's no roadside assistance. There's only you, your boat, and the choices you made before you left the dock. If this video helped you see your outboard differently, consider it a gift from 100 people who spend their lives fixing what others forget. Take care of your engine. It's the only thing standing between you and a very long swim home.